Hello, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Pedro Carvalho, and I'm going to speak about unused energy prices and taxes. So the scope of this presentation is to basically cover three main topics. So the first one is the importance of unused energy prices. Then we go through a bit of methodology and key concepts. And in the end, I'll give you an overview of our data collection. So first of all, why energy prices are so important. So the first reason is that they reflect some global events. And here we plotted the Brent date midpoint on a close in dollars per barrel. And you can see in the plot that these prices they reflected some global events that happened in this timeline. For example, the OPEC quota crisis in the late 90s, or the financial crisis in 2008, or the oversupply in 14s, and more recently, the COVID pandemic. So, but energy prices are not reflecting only global events. They are also part of our local lives as well, or daily lives. So here in this slide, I selected some headlines from the past years, talking about the influence of unused energy prices in inflation, for example. So there's the first one on the top left is talking about a measure that took place in France. Another one is talking on the right is talking about the European gas prices. Then we have a headline from China and another one for Argentina. But the energy prices that are also very important because they represent a very relevant expenditure of households or even industry. So here on the left, we have a very interesting plot that we created combining the two databases, the one that you just saw the presentation from Thomas, the energy efficiency one, and the prices, in which we have an average household energy expenditure for some countries. And as you can see, in the United States, most of the energy expenditure goes to the transport sector, and it increased a lot from 19 to 2022 compared to most of the other countries. And the energy prices, they are very representative in terms of economy as well, which accounts for roughly around 9% of the country's GDP. And as I said, they are a key driver for the industrial competitiveness as well. As an example here, we have the electricity prices that represent around 40% of aluminum production costs. And now I'd like to give a short example about some of our database. So here we have high-grade gasoline prices in some of the OECD countries. And as you can see, the US, they pay usually less than the rest of the countries in this plot due to government measures or taxation differences and so on. So here in 2022, the US household consumer would pay around 36% less than one in France, and this number increased to 44% in 2023. But in order to make sense of these comparisons, we first need to take into account the inflation or deflation, because we usually collect the data in national currencies per physical unit. So we need to have a common unit over time. That's why we use in our database US dollars of 2015 and the indices to deflate the prices. And we often might want to use purchase power parities in order to take into account the different perceived value of money in different countries. So now let's have a quick look at one of the example covering the PPPs. So here we have a plot of electricity prices for residential customers in some OECD countries. And as you can see, they are in US dollars per megawatt hour. And we have the United Kingdom as the country with the most, with the highest prices. But if we adjust these prices using PPPs, this figure changes a lot. So this is the same order of countries, but with prices adjusted by PPP. And if you reorder this, you have Italy with the highest prices. So when we compare the prices, it's also important to take that analysis into account. Now let's talk a little bit about the methodology and key concepts. So I've been talking about prices and end-use prices, but what are this end-use price actually? It's basically what the end user pay for a particular energy product. And this is mainly composed of two main components. The first one is the ex-tax price, and the second one is the total tax. And this second one is then break down into two parts, the value-added tax and the excise tax. So let's have a look into each of these components now. So first, the ex-tax price. The ex-tax price, they are basically the component of the total price of the end-use price that covers all costs before the consumer, but taxes, subsidies, and levies. So we are talking about raw materials, we are talking about capital expenditure, production costs or labor costs, transport and distribution, and profit margins. Then, since we talked about this ex-tax price that doesn't include taxes, let's talk a bit about the taxation part. So the excise taxes, they are generally levied on a volume basis. So it means currency per physical unit, and they exclude VAT. And they depend a lot from country to country. So here, for example, I selected 3 different countries with 3 different excise taxation systems. And the first one is Sweden. And in there you have energy taxes, environmental or carbon taxes, and sulfur taxes for gasoline. Whereas in France, we have energy taxes and carbon or environmental taxes. And in Japan, we also have a local tax, which depends on the region of the country. So this taxation type, it's usually a result of government decisions, and it's also used to encourage or discourage consumption of a particular energy product or fuel. Now let's talk a bit about the value-added tax. So the VAT, it's a consumption tax ad valorem, and it's usually levied on value. Therefore, it's a rate, and it was used by 160 countries in 2015, and this number increased to 170 in 2023. Now let's have a quick example, and I would like to ask you to go to menti.com and use this code 83231577, and we'll calculate the end-use price for gasoline in prices land. So we'll start from the X-tax, the excise tax, and the VAT rate. And I can give you 2 minutes to try to calculate the end-use price. And remember that the VAT amount is calculated over the sum of X-tax and excise tax. So yes, as I see, most of you got it right. So first of all, we calculate the VAT amount as 20% of 2, then 0.4. Then we calculate the total tax, which is the VAT amount plus the excise tax, 0.9. And then finally, you calculate the end-use price as the X-tax plus total tax, 2.4. And this example, it was taken from a real one. And as you might see, the total tax, it's represent almost 40% of the end-use price. And well, then it leads us to question, okay, why do governments tax energy products? So they basically do for mainly three reasons. The first one is to internalize costs, so to compensate for environmental and health issues from emissions of resulting from the use or production of the energy products. The second one is to raise revenue. So the energy demand is relatively inelastic, so energy products are good targets for taxation, for revenue raising. And the third one is to drive change. So governments can use taxation, more specifically excise taxes, to drive change, to change behavior, to encourage or discourage the use of a particular fuel or energy product. Now let's talk a bit about our data collection. So our database is made of OECD and non-OECD countries, and we have quarterly and yearly publications, okay? And more recently, a few years ago, we also included the monthly publication for a subset of countries, but the main ones are the quarterly and yearly ones. So for OECD, we have a quarterly publication, and for non-OECD members, we have a yearly publication with different time granularities for 147 countries. And we are always expanding this. We are always reviewing the data that we collect. And this is only possible due to the great collaboration we have with our OECD members and some non-OECD as well, and also due to some extensive desk research. So in terms of data collection, we typically get data from energy ministries, national statistics offices, central banks, or even regulatory agencies. And we usually get find data for residential, industrial, and transport sectors. So here on the right, you see some few examples of data sources. So the first one is the Statistical Office in Tunisia. The second one is the Egypt Statistical Office. Then Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Jordan. The National Agency of Petroleum in Brazil. And the Ministry of Energy in Thailand. So I'd like to finish my presentation asking you to go to the Menti and let us know if you are aware of any end-use energy price data collection in your country and which usually institution does that